The conditions I have is a group of conditions, and they all contribute to what I live with. So I've been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, but I've also been diagnosed with a number of other conditions that are more rare and probably affect me more. My condition does impact on sex and intimacy in the relationships I have. There's the physical aspects. So obviously I have paralysis of my lower half, and I also have numerous lines into my body and tubes into my body. So physically, I think that although I'm a fully capable person, you find limitations that you perhaps work around, and I think a lot of that is something that you don't know until you have a partner and you explore things together. I think the bigger things for me is that it affects my relationships. For example, I've spent a lot of time in hospital. It's very difficult when you feel that you've got this person and this relationship that you adore, but you can't be with them. We've had numerous Valentine's Days, Christmas Day, and times where you don't get the choice. You have to make the best out of the situation you have. And I also think that it probably affects my self-confidence. There's times, where any young person that they're dealing with all these differences that they've got, that other people perhaps don't have to deal with, that it makes an impact. I think a lot of that is things we've worked through together, not either one of us. And I also think that Jordan gives me a lot of reassurance. When we're first together, finding that line, because he is my partner and not my carer, and
absolutely.
Feeling that those roles stay separate.
There's always going to be an element of care, regardless of whether somebody's in a condition where they're disabled or chronically ill, however, I think there is always that element of care. And okay, you do things that you wouldn't normally do as a boyfriend, but it becomes more of, it just becomes more of an extended role. That's the best way of putting it. You're still a boyfriend first. I don't treat her any differently as if I was dating anybody else. And it's been important that we've always had that separation, that, I'm not like a nurse that comes in to care. I'll always care for her, but it's kind of that separation between, still do the usual things. We go on dates, holidays together, we do all that. It's no different in that respect. I just think when it comes to boyfriend versus carer, for me, it's never been an issue. From day one, in terms of coming into intimacy and stuff like that, wasn't my priority thinking, how's this going to work? It was more, I love this girl and it will work, and it didn't really matter how. So I think that's just, for me personally, it's just finding that gentle separation. But we've always been very front and forward with it, to make sure it was never just, and Chloe was very kind of anxious of me being or thinking that I was the carer and not the boyfriend. But honestly, we've got the balance absolutely spot on.
And I think the key for us is that we talk about everything. We can only know how each other are feeling if we talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's the crux of our relationship. That's the crux of every intimate moment, everything is, you need to talk about things, just like any healthy relationship. But that's what keeps the balance for us. We have dealt with some real negativity as well. There has been things that have really impacted our relationship that probably could have been dealt with differently. A huge one is the fact that when I became unwell and I lost the use of my legs, I was confined to our small lounge in our family home, and that had to become my everything room. As a 20-year-old, that is just zero dignity. Yeah. So I had no toilet, I had nowhere to wash my hands, I had nowhere to shower, I couldn't leave the room. The only time I got to leave the room was usually if an ambulance crew were trying to get me out the room because I was seriously ill. And I did feel a bit like a prisoner in that room. Obviously, that is the room where I met Jordan. And I do often wonder how, if we hadn't have had the incredible opportunities that we did, and DIY SOS rebuilt our home and we were given this amazing space, how our relationship could have evolved in the space that we had.
I don't think it would have done. You could imagine it was like paper thin walls, and you know, when you're, you know, I'm slightly older than Chloe and by a few years, and you just, you know, it's when you're trying to be intimate, or when you're trying to be that particular in that way with a partner, it's not great having the parents that are sat right next door in the living room with a wall that's probably, you know, no wider than that. So it was a massive gain of independence for us, really, wasn't it?
It was also you respecting my family, you know.
Yeah, because you're going into their home
with my younger siblings, and
yeah, and it's you do want to, that term and phrase, alone time. It wasn't alone time in that first particular situation, and when DIY SOS came and did, you know, we had our own place, we had the annex, we had a little home essentially, and it definitely, and we've both discussed this, but I don't think it would have blossomed in the same way, because there would have been too many restrictions. That would have been the simple fact of it.
We wouldn't have been given the time and space to get to know each other, and what I find very difficult is there's only a handful of people that get homes from DIY SOS, and it shouldn't rely on a television programme to fix someone's life. We had to really expose ourselves and put ourselves out there, and there were times I said, I don't think I want to do it. I don't want my family, I don't want it to be entertainment. My illness isn't entertainment, but the crux of it was they were incredible and they gave us this space. But surely every disabled person or every unwell person that's already going through these huge life challenges, they shouldn't have to rely on these charity funding for, there should be something in place. And I think that felt like a huge letdown. Sex and intimacy in relationships are an important part, not just in my life, in every life. Something that I passionately and strongly believe is, it is part of the ant in the garden's life. It is part of the giraffe in the zoo's life. It is part of every single life. So why wouldn't it be part of a human's life? Doesn't matter what situation they are in. A disability doesn't change your instincts. It doesn't change who you are. And people are built on sex and intimacy and relationships. That's what we're here to be and do. And something it's something I really strongly believe is that everyone has the right to those feelings. And it upsets me that there is people that almost, not shamed out of it, but embarrassed out of it, because it's something that is so, it's an intense feeling for a human being, and it's something that lots of people, they might not know that they live for it, but that's, you know, that's inbuilt in us. As
Chloe mentioned, it is hard and difficult. It doesn't always come easily, especially for somebody in her circumstances. It doesn't. And we often joke, don't we?
We do. Everything becomes a joke.
Everything becomes a joke
us.
Because it's just mad when you look at how it's all come together. But the main thing is, from day one, I think it become a conversation quite early on, hadn't it?
Very. We were very open and honest with each other. Very. It's a way you learn how to communicate. It's a way that we learn each other's boundaries. We learnt. A huge part of being intimate is your vulnerabilities. And I think in a relationship, you need to know each other's vulnerabilities. And I don't think there's other ways necessarily to get those same raw emotions and vulnerabilities and to fully put your trust in someone.
And I think the intimacy grows, you know, being from just a normal sexual relationship between two adults into something more, and when we started contemplating on building a family, and that's when it gets a bit more serious, and that's when it becomes a bit more of a, you know, you can kind of, you want to complete the picture, you really do, and you know, it's something that we both still to this day want to do, and it's been a tough ride, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think also the fact that when you start thinking about things like a family, that's when you all of a sudden have to deal with other people as well, and their thoughts on it. For some reason, whenever you talk about being a parent or parenting or anything along those lines, suddenly everyone feels that it's okay to share their opinion and their way they think you should do it. Personally, I've had that in situations where people have, for example, I've had people say, oh, well, are you going to use a surrogate? That's not your question to ask, because by asking that question, you are implying that you feel that that's necessary. And that's taking away my right, because yes, I'm disabled, and yes, I have a disability, and yes, I have these illnesses, but I also have the mental capacity to choose if I want to take that risk, and that should be respected. I've had situations where it's been difficult because the ethics, for doctors, it's been difficult because they're finding this balance between knowingly put myself in this situation that could perhaps be dangerous, but also respecting my rights as a human and as a young person, and something that is also an integral part of many people's lives, and my choice. And I think that's where it suddenly becomes something a lot of people feel that they can have their say on, perhaps more than they should be allowed. I think
the one thing is because you're somebody in Chloe's position, as a normal time span is you have choices throughout your life, and it seems to be, though, because you're in the position that you're in, people then take those choices and say, well, you shouldn't have that one, you shouldn't have that one, you shouldn't have that one, but behind it all, you're still a human being. And you've already had choices taken away from you. The fact that she can't walk, that's something that's had a choice that's taken away from her. She doesn't have the opportunity to be able to just get up and go and grab herself a glass of water or eat a meal or anything like that. So I think for people to sit on the outside and then make choices and say, oh no, you can't have a baby, or you shouldn't be a parent, or why are you doing this, why are you doing that? I just think, in what other circumstances would someone say that to you? People can always advise. Absolutely, that's their kind of right. That's their. Sometimes it's like you said with docs, like it's caring. It's choosing between the patient's care and what the patient wants, and that's a fine line. But the everyday person, do they really have a right to comment on what you want in life? I don't think so, and I don't think it's any different for whether you're a normal couple or you're a couple in a situation like ours. But then, what is normal?
This time last year, we were actually really, really lucky in one sense, and whilst it was probably one of the most horrific things we've been through, it was also one of the most beautiful things we've been through. This time last year, we had a little girl, Emma. She was born at 22 weeks and 5 days, and it will be her birthday on Saturday, so in a few days' time. It's her first birthday anniversary. Although our little girl isn't with us now, we did experience a lot of what a disabled person would experience, and what people with illness might experience in getting pregnant, and the pregnancy and kind of giving birth, and the feelings that surrounded that, not just by us but by friends and by family and by professionals. And it's actually been it's not been a straightforward journey. So we were very lucky that we've got a very good team at the hospital that look after me. But when it came to this, it was something they felt very much in the dark with. Not just the fact judging me, but it was also the fact that it's not something they deal with a lot. And I think because medicine has advanced so much, more and more they're seeing people that are unwell being able to do things that they couldn't do 10 years ago. And I think childbirth and pregnancy is perhaps one of those. I know for me, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to. And I'm so grateful for science for that. But one of the things that they found very conflicting at the beginning was whether it was ethical to let me have a child. knowing that I'd have to come off medication that would make me unwell as a person, knowing that they'd kind of have to make me suffer, but also recognizing that I had the mental capacity to make that choice. And if I wanted to make that choice, that I was going to suffer, but for good reason, that was okay for me to do. And as time progressed, we saw more excitement from the medical professionals, but also that reserve. We were very, very, very blessed to have a consultant who strongly believes in the rights of mothers that are ill, mothers that are disabled, fathers that, you know, deserve to be fathers, but she preliminarily looks after, you know, getting women through having a child. And I highly, highly respect her, because she, although we unfortunately lost Emma, she made a promise to us that as long as we are willing and as long as we want this, she will fight as hard as we fight. And that is a huge, huge thing for us as a couple.
My one concern has always been, I want a family, absolutely 100%. But in a family, I still want my partner to be there at the end of it. You know, I think my biggest dread was us having a baby and then me being left with the baby. Not because I'm not capable, but it's the family unit. It's not me as an individual. And I think that for me was, I'm a very optimistic person anyway, and I believe that we could do it, and I've got no doubts that we can do it again. And it was one of the hardest moments to have to find out that our little girl wasn't going to be coming into the world as we'd hoped, as we had planned for, as we had so many aspirations and dreams for her. But at the same time, it was just a kind of a door opening. We knew, you know, the first time round when Chloe had a very, very early miscarriage, it was a, wow, fantastic, this can happen. Because for such a long time, we didn't think it could. So that was an absolute magical bonus. And then the second time round, it was heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, but you felt like you've learned something from it. Absolutely. You know, she's not with us now, but the lessons that we've learned to the 22 weeks that she was in our lives and the remaining time afterwards, and she will be for the rest of our lives, is absolutely incredible. And I think when you gave birth to her and she came out, you couldn't quite describe it. And it was really, really magical for that one moment. And the biggest disappointment was not being able to hear the cries of our baby. I think that's what, for me, breaks it. But wholeheartedly, we'll go again, because we want this and we want a family, and we feel like it's something else that's been taken away from us. And we are very resilient people.
We can't put into words how different it is to have someone who respects our rights, because we know what it's like before knowing her to not have that. And to have that person that doesn't see your disability, she sees your wants and desires to be parents. And for that person to be as devastated as we were, you know, we had one side of people going, well, you should have expected that. Well, no. Emma's postmortem was perfect. She was healthy. They don't know why. It was not me. Yet that does seem to be people's first thought, and that can be really difficult. But overall, for us, we just feel it's so important that people know we're humans, and that we have wants and desires, and that meeting our little girl, we do the pain 10 times over to look into her eyes. We do the pain 10 times over to hold her and sing to her and read her books like we did. We sat in our little bubble for 24 hours doing as many things possible. And we do that pain over and over and over. A huge part of us choosing to have a child is that actually we're still capable of being parents, and we're still capable of loving, and we're still capable of providing, and we're still capable of nurturing. And yes, I can't run after them in the park, but that doesn't mean that they will not be that their life won't be fulfilling, and their life won't be valued, and that they won't be loved. Like, there is so much love for a child that comes from a situation such as ours, because they weren't given to us easy. And I think that creates a desire and a bond that is fierce and strong. And it's a desire that actually, without knowing this pain and suffering, we wouldn't know how intensely you can want a child. I don't think that something that comes easy is often appreciated as much as something that comes hard.
Yeah.
And Emma was our hard. She was our little girl that we didn't get to grow and nurture and love, but she was wanted and valued and appreciated. And our next child will be just as fiercely loved, and they will grow up to be a well-rounded child with disabled parents, and that's okay. And I think that is the crux of everything, that there may be two parents, me and a perfectly able-bodied parent, but who's to say that they can do the role better? I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true in many cases all over the world. I think there's brilliant parents in every scenario and situation, and I think what it comes down to is that we love.
Yeah.